I'm a man now. The next day was really busy with Jeffrey's treatment and 1,000,001 doctors coming into the room. So I didn't see Samantha at all throughout the whole morning and afternoon. I was planning to stop by her room and say goodbye, but I got distracted on the way out. I overheard the main guy, Dr. Moses, give my dad a pretty strong warning as we were ready to leave. Listen, Mr. Elper, I've been on and off the phone with your son's pediatrician all morning. I'm concerned about Jeffrey's hepatic function. His ALT has climbed sharply over the past week, and I want Dr. Perot to keep an eye on your son's blood counts and transaminase numbers for the next couple of weeks. If the AST climbs too, we'll need to know about it. Of course, we'll be running our own tests every week here, but the liver trouble is nothing to mess about with. I want to be extremely cautious as long as Jeffrey is on such a high dose of 6-MP and methotrexate. I'm sorry, doctor, but my wife is the one who has been handling all this medical stuff so far. Can you explain that? Okay, hepatic equals liver. The liver's job is to filter the blood. If child is on as many heavy-duty chemotherapy drugs as Jeffrey, the liver takes a beating. He checked the blood levels of certain enzymes periodically. We check the blood levels of some enzymes periodically in order to make sure that the liver is handling this strain adequately. If the liver begins to sustain damage, the enzyme levels should theoretically give us some warning. Then we have to adjust the patient's meds until we can get a chemo regimen in balance with the patient's liver function. Otherwise, there will be a risk of liver failure, which can be fatal. That was just peachy. Theoretically, gives us some warning. Sheesh. So Jeffrey's liver tests aren't so good right now. They're really not great. So what do we have to do? You'll need to bring your son to the lab for blood work 3 days from now. Dr. Perot has all the details. There's a routine in this case. That's the routine in cases like this. Just to be on the safe side, keep this in mind for the future. If you think Jeffrey is looking at all yellow, his skin tone around the eyes, bring him in immediately. Also, as always, if he suddenly spikes a fever over the next few days, he will need urgent care. Urgent care? Yes, you will need to drop everything to get him to the ER, no matter where you are, no matter what you are doing. Got it? Yes, doctor. One more thing. Mr. Elper, don't worry. We have a coordinated team of doctors monitoring the situation very closely. You have to love when doctor lays all this horrific stuff on you and then tells you not to worry. It's like saying, here's 37 pounds of assorted chocolates. Try not thinking about food though. Or look, there's Renee Albert in a bikini. But please try to keep your mind on our algebraic functions. So you can see why I didn't have time to drop in on my new friend, Sam. As we were walking out of the ward with all our stuff, I heard some clicking sounds. She was trying out her new drumsticks. I was hoping that I really could give her a lesson next time. I came down with Jeffrey, and thanks to her, I was sure there would be a next time. In the car on the way home, my dad didn't say much until we got clear of heavy Philadelphia traffic and Jeffrey was asleep. Then he turned to me and said, look, I want to thank you for coming down to support Jeffrey. Maybe I haven't been saying it, but I'm really very proud of you. You're turning into a good man. Wow, a good man? You caught that correct. Stephen is a man now. Quick, somebody tell all the chicks and the babes at school for me. And I've been thinking about this concert thing. I know how much music means to you, and I also know that you've been doing this for the right reasons. Even though I really don't think we need the help, you can go ahead with it. I'm not sure I'll be able to go with all the tax work I have to do this month, but and all, but I'm behind your decision. You're not going to my concert? You, I'm not sure, Stephen. I have a lot to get caught up on, and these last few weeks before April 15th are crunch time for accountants every year. I'll do my best. My first thought, my first thought when he said that was wonderful. Now I'm a man, my dad can weasel his way out of going to my concerts. What's next? Maybe he'll stop buying food for me and rent out my room. Then for possibly the first time since all this started, I stopped feeling sorry for myself and thought of other people's situations. It could be worse. I could have been Annette, who had practiced all year for a concert she wouldn't play in. Or Sam, who might be dying all by herself in a hospital while her sister parties it up at college. Or Jeffrey. Speaking of Jeffrey, you should have seen how my mother charged straight to him when we pulled into the driveway. I guess she had gotten her strength back while we were gone, because she lifted Jeffrey up with a rib-crushing hug. He practically begged her to let him down. I guess I was still in my new manly sympathetic mode, because normally I would have been standing around saying until my mom noticed me too. But that day I just looked at her with new appreciation. This woman had spent nearly half of her time this year at the hospital with her son, praying for him, watching over him, comforting him, handling all this overwhelming cancer stuff. And suddenly, as she reached out and squeezed my arm, I realized without any shadow of a doubt that she would have done the same for me. Maybe you'll think it's nuts that the brother of a cancer patient would feel lucky, but at this instant, I most certainly did. The next 3 weeks of school were absolutely nutty. Annette and Renee both insisted on tutoring me in the subject I missed during my 2 days away in Philadelphia. I let Renee into the house this time. They also insisted on updating me daily on the progress of the benefit concert, to the point where the details were too much. The posters are up all over town. We called the newspaper. They said they'll send a reporter to the last rehearsal and the concert. The high school band had already sold 286 tickets. Your brother's school took out a full-page ad in the program. Dexter's Auto Body bought a double-page spread, and I was half expecting them to tell me how many light bulbs were in the school stage ad, what color the bulbs were, and how much heat they gave off in kilojoules, and whether that was greater than or less than the total caloric output of school cafeteria at any given day, with or without the snack line. But I knew they meant well, in the sense they were doing all this for me. My teachers and fellow students were all over me too. I brought tickets to your concert. I bought 2 tickets to your concert. I bought 7 tickets and rented 6 strangers in a minivan for the night. Again, everyone meant well, but I was really hoping that this money they raised would really take a load off my parents' shoulders. But the intensity of all this attention was pretty high. I just couldn't wait to actually get up there and play the drums for all these people that I was living for anyway. And if excessive amounts of rehearsal time were any indication of success, they were surely destined to go down in jazz history. There were practices 4 days a week the last few weeks. In fact, if it had spent any more time with a van driver who was bringing just about everyone she knew to the concert, I swear I would have started calling her mom. Plus, I was still taking lessons on Saturdays from Mr. Stoll, who was bringing 7 students to the concert, and practicing on my own, both at home and during my opportunity periods at school. And I was doing all my homework. My math tutor, who was planning to bring a small army of anal retentive calculator carrying math teacher children to the concert, even recommended me for improved work habits. Even commented for my improved work habits. Speaking of improved work habits, I was also spending a ton of time reading. Mrs. Galley, 4 tickets and 1 booster ad, she called me down right before big trip to the hospital with Jeffrey. She said she just wanted to check in with me, but she immediately pushed candy dish my way. So I knew there was a heavy topic on the agenda. It turned out she'd ordered a book for me to read about childhood leukemia and its treatment. She said that she thought might help me process my feelings. I thanked her, snatched up some candy hearts, and walked out in my book under my arm. At the time, my thought was, yeah, like I'm really in the mood to read a book about this when I'm living it 24/7 already. But after I got back from the hospital, I picked up the book again because I truly did want to understand what was going on with my brother and Samantha too. It was about 600 pages long, but I was already halfway through, and somebody else had been reading it every night after I went to bed, my dad. I think reading it was helping both of us. It was like Mrs. Galley had said, I want you to leave you with one thing to think about. Instead of agonizing over the things that you can't change, why don't you try working on the things that you can change? We couldn't change the fact that Jeffrey felt sick, but we could make sure that we knew what was going on. And there was one thing I'd finally figured out. If it's on your mind, is something you can change. And so everyone was rallying around Jeffrey. Everything was going well. Jeffrey's next 3 hospital visits were uneventful. The blood counts and liver function tests were steady, not great, but steady. Life was going as well as we could possibly expect right up until the day of the concert.